Morning, everyone. Happy Monday. This is your ICBA daily news update for Monday, September 25th, 2023. I'm going to give you some heads up on some sneaky federal union monopoly plans, Kelowna becoming a gown town, and Premier Smith giving us the 411 on federal ministers and their views on energy. As always, if you're on Facebook for links to these sources, please visit icbaindependent.ca, because of course we can't post media links here because the Trudeau government and Meta are still in a crazy battle over the Trudeau government's foolish online news act. Okay, three stories. First of all, so buried in the Trudeau government's investment tax credit scheme for clean energy projects, which was announced a few months ago as part of the federal budget, was a little provision, a provision that project owners must pay labor costs based on the collective agreements of unions that represent just 15% of BC construction professionals and 12% of Alberta's. This is really a backdoor way to give the unions, the building trade unions, a monopoly that cuts out 85% of workers in BC and 88% of construction workers in Alberta. So ICBA BC President Chris Gardner and ICBA Alberta President Mike Martens, they teamed up on writing an op-ed pointing out the foolishness and unfairness of such a policy and the costs to the economy. Of course, we've seen this before in British Columbia, unfortunately. The Horgan and EB governments have given a series of projects, set on a series of projects, a monopoly for the building trades unions, which again, only represent 15% of construction professionals. It's driven costs out of control on things like the Patello Bridge, couch and hospital replacement, and Highway 1 widening. These things cost money. When you take bidders out of a process, guess what? The bids end up being higher and people have to end up paying more. So foolish policy. Can't believe this is one that the Trudeau government would want to emulate. And kudos to Chris and Mike for starting to wave the flag on this and educating the public on the effects of it. Okay, switching to Kelowna. There's an interesting piece in Kelowna Now on the 43-floor University of BC Okanagan Tower being built in downtown Kelowna. Now, University of BC Okanagan has a campus kind of on the Vernon side of town. I'm not sure if that would be the east side of town. Anyways, they have a big campus there. Now they're going into downtown Kelowna with a 43-floor building. This will actually be the tallest building in Kelowna, 10 stories of classrooms and offices, and then student residence above. But this has sparked the university effect, where other buildings spring up nearby to help provide housing and other amenities for those students in that building. Across the street is ONE Varsity Tower, which is actually being built by longtime ICBA member Kerkhoff Construction. That's going to include 36 stories of condos. Now, we talked about the university effect. This is also about Kelowna becoming what's called a gown town, which bodes very well for its economic security. There's been a lot of work on this done, especially in the United States, about cities that have thriving universities within them. And then even during recession times, economically, often during recession, what you see is a lot of people go back to school, and these towns actually perform better during recessions than the average town that doesn't have a university. So gown towns are a way to kind of stabilize your economy, make sure that you're resilient during recession. It's a good sign for Kelowna if that's where they're headed. And then finally, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, she was in Banff on the weekend and told delegates at the Global Business Forum that the federal Liberals seem pretty divided over the future of Canadian oil and gas. So she reiterated how disappointed she was with Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault and Natural Resource Ministers Jonathan Wilkinson, who, of course, were at the World Petroleum Congress last week, basically kicking the snot out of Canadian oil and gas, making sure that everyone knew that they saw that as a sunset industry. So you would think Guilbeault and Wilkinson were speaking for all federal Liberals, and yet Premier Smith, no fan of Justin Trudeau and those folks, Premier Smith came out and said she finds that working with Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, Innovation Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc, Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan, and Employment Minister Randy Boissonnault they've all been very helpful. Quote, I would say it's not uniformly negative in the Liberal caucus, but for some reason, they're allowing Steven Guilbeault to be a maverick and a renegade and quite offensive to those of us who are trying to be reasonable and adult about this, said Danielle Smith. Very interesting to get that kind of insight into what's going on within the federal Liberal caucus. Another sign of how things are starting to splinter as that government becomes tired and frankly devoid of ideas and trailing in the polls by as much as 20 points. There was a recent poll done in British Columbia. It actually showed that basically the federal Liberals would be wiped out in BC. The Conservatives are on track to win every single seat with more than 50% of the vote. Pretty crazy. Anyways, very interesting to see that there is a split within the Liberal caucus. Not sure where that goes. Right now, it seems like Guilbeault and Wilkinson are winning out over Freeland, Champagne, LeBlanc, O'Regan, and Boissonnault. But I guess we'll wait and see. There is certainly a financial and economic imperative on the federal Liberals to generate more revenue for Canada. Best way to do that is with our massive oil and gas reserves. All right, well, that's it for this week, for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more news, and look forward to seeing you soon.